The Truth as Told by Mason Buttle by Sarah Rodriguez, Angela Briggs, Georgia Griffin, and Danielle Filkins.
The author of this book is Leslie Connor. She has a few other books, mostly written for middle-aged grades. This book is a realistic novel. It was published on January 23rd of 2018 by Catherine Teigen Books. This is a mid-level grade book that could be used within grades 4 or 5. There are a lot of literary elements within the book. This includes foreshadowing, symbolism, metaphors, similes, juxtaposition, and allusions. In the classroom, we can teach the students the literary devices and have them find some throughout the book, then explain in a short paper how these devices add to the story.
So the synopsis of the story is Mason Buttle is the biggest, sweatiest kid in his grade and suffers from dyslexia. The Truth as Told by Mason Buttle follows his story of grief caused by the death of his friend Benny Kilmartin. The investigation continues on as the head lieutenant does not believe Mason's story. Mason and his new friend Calvin Chomsky are continuously bullied by boys in Mason's neighborhood, so they create a safe space underground. When Calvin disappears, Mason is faced with trouble again and is motivated to figure out what happened to Calvin and Benny. So first, on to the main character. Mason Buttle is a tall 7th grade boy. He is actually the tallest and biggest in his grade. However, unlike most middle schoolers, he suffers from diaphoresis, which is a sweat gland problem where someone sweats excessively in relation to their environment. The white t-shirt represents Mason throughout the story because he is always changing his shirt, at least 2 times a day, because of his excessive sweating. Him having to change his shirt leads to one of the first instances of bullying in the story. Another point about Mason's appearance that is invisible is he suffers from dyslexia. His actions in the book follow his trait of being loyal. Because of his dyslexia, Mason has a hard time writing, so instead he uses the dragon. The picture of the dragon represents what Mason and Miss Bliney, the social worker, call the dragon. It is a computer program that puts speech to text and can read the text back to you. Mason uses this program to try and write his story about his past friend Benny for the questioning lieutenant. Mainly, Mason stands up for his friend Calvin Chomsky when the bullies start to go after them both. As the story progresses, Mason's confidence grows and stands up for himself when put in stressful situations instead of staying silent. His conversations with most characters in the book are thought out and he is confident in his speech. However, when Mason is unsure or especially under pressure, which is during most of the story, his conversations are short and very timid. It is not until the end of the story that his constant dialogue becomes fully thought out and he can hold conversations for a longer period of time. Mason's thoughts and internal conversations are primarily opposite of his dialogue for most of the story. His internal conversations are confident and bold, mainly sharing what he wishes he could actually say to someone. This would be making fun of them in some sort of way. He also thinks and converses about past memories when his life was good before the accident. He thinks of his bad luck, or as he calls a curse, could be lifted someday.
The story is told in first-person point of view by Mason Buttle. He shares his story of loss and all of the challenges that he has been facing in his life. Since Mason struggles to read and write, he tells his story through the dragon. This allows Mason to just talk while the computer writes down everything that he says. The dragon becomes very beneficial to Mason because it allows him to print out his stories and share them with other people. The computer represents how Mason tells his stories to the other people around him.
Now on to the setting. The picture on the right is a picture of an apple tree in an orchard. This represents the setting of the book. Most of the book takes place on the Buttle family orchard, whether that's at Mason's house, which she likes to call the Crumble Down, and Mason and Calvin's secret root cellar hideout, or running between the trees, dodging lacrosse balls and apples. The story takes place over a few months during apple season, which is August to October. It is present day, and we know this because they talk about how Calvin loves to look things up on his tablet, and the weather does not play a critical part in this story. Now let's get into the plot. The conflict at the beginning of the book is that it's been almost 2 years since Benny Kilmartin, Mason's best friend, was found dead on the Buttle family orchard, and Lieutenant Baird still has questions, and all of them seem to lead back to Mason. Lieutenant thinks Mason had something to do with Benny's death, since Mason can't seem to remember where his handsaw went around the time of Denny's death. This is a picture of the handsaw representing the one that went missing.
One of the main roadblocks that occurs throughout this story is the constant bullying towards Mason. We chose a picture of a lacrosse stick and a lacrosse ball because in the story, the bullies continuously pelt them with lacrosse balls when they step off the bus and when they are outside. Another major roadblock in the story is Mason's dyslexia. We chose a blank notepad because he is not able to write down his thoughts and he needs to come up with other conventional ways to do that.
Climax of the story is what we call the chase. During this time, Mason and Calvin are being chased by the bullies at the pond and are forced to split up. Mason makes it home after checking the root cellar for Calvin and not finding him. He sits down for dinner at the family table when the landline rings. It was Calvin's housekeeper saying he did not make it home for dinner. At this point, Mason's world turns upside down and experiences what would be called deja vu. The landline phone represents the important call where Mason finds out Calvin did not make it home for dinner and is missing.
Mason was given a lot of challenges at such a young age and had no idea how to process what he was going through. Even when Mason had everything stacked against him, he managed to never give up and stayed true to himself. With all of the chaos going on, the truth was revealed about Mason, and it got the whole town talking. But you'll have to read the whole story to find out the truth about Mason Buttle. The paper represents the truth about Mason coming out after so many months.
And last, we have the theme. The theme is an integral part of any story, and this story is no different. Themes can either be explicit or implicit. The themes that were found in our book were both implicit themes. The first theme that we have come up with is that even when the world is against you, you should never give up. To represent this theme, we chose a picture of a person standing on top of the world. The second theme that we have is to not let what others think about you impact what you think about yourself. We chose a bandana for this because in the story, Mason sweats a lot and his peers tend to see him as gross. He does not let what his peers think about him impact what he thinks about himself.
Overall, this book was not what we expected, but we really enjoyed reading it. We are very surprised with the events that happened and we're eager to keep reading.